Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening for those of you who are on the East Coast right now. Welcome. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is the La Maison de Rouge Monday night weekly live broadcast. I am your host, Lucy Sweetkill, one half of the duo that is La Maison de Rouge. A little bit about who we are. LMDR is dedicated to expanding the BDSM experience by discussing, educating, and informing our audiences about the intersections of kink, wellness, sexuality, spirituality, and social activism. We aim to create a safe space for discussing these topics, as well as providing an avenue for our guests to share their stories and experiences. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Tonight, our guest is a little different than our usual guests. Tonight, we are going onto the submissive side. We will be speaking with a latex and rubber fetishist, photographer, and submissive. Pronouns he, him. Please welcome Photopop.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
How are you, Miss Lucy? Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm doing really well. How are you doing in the cold?
Yeah, it's not. It's nice and warm down here in my basement right now. But yeah, no, things are good. It's spent some of the day shoveling outside, so it's nice and cold in New Jersey.
Luckily, I'm kind of out of that for the moment. All right. So we tend to get a lot of questions, as you know, someone who has watched our show many of times, usually our guests are other DOMs, other providers, sex workers, therapists, spiritual individuals. We run the gamut, but we love being able to pull on subs onto our show who are comfortable being on, as not everyone is comfortable with their, face or their voice being on. So we're happy that you could join us, because I think that side, the sub side, the fetishist side, the kinkster, side of things is such an important area to discuss and get different viewpoints, because I think so many people, and I bet you could relate to this, felt very alone in their journey, in their kink journey, in their submissive journey. So I would love to know, how did it all start? Like for you, what was your first kinky memory into pretty much where you are now?
Yeah, that's a lot. First, I wanted to say thank you, because you and I have been friends for a long time, going back to my early introduction to the kink community, and I am so honored to be on this show. So it's really cool to be here with you. So thank you. And I'm kind of flattered as a sub. I know it's a big honor to be here, and my journey has been a winding one. I didn't grow up anywhere near the concept of kink. I grew up in a very, as we've talked about in the past, very religious community. And my earliest memories of kink, I think, go back to when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I remember seeing one of my sisters in synagogue, one of my sister's friends in synagogue, wearing this clothing with shiny PVC suspenders or something like that on it, and just wanting to touch it. And that is probably the oldest memory I have of being attracted to shine or kink or rubber in some form that I didn't know then that's what it was going to be. I would say later, the first, crush I had was Gwen Stefani on the cover of the Tragic Kingdom album, in that red dress, and the PVC was definitely a coming of age moment for me. So that definitely helped me transition to adulthood, if I could put it that way. But when I got older, I had been in a religious community and got married young, and didn't really know what I was into. I thought I was really very much into leather and the look of BDSM, but didn't really think I had any interest in it at all. And the story I always tell is that when I was about to get married, about to go on my honeymoon, went to Purple Passion, as many of us do for the first time, very nervous, very shy, anxious, and walking around the store was looking at the leather, looking at the PVC, and just not feeling comfortable with any of it. And I being still somewhat religious with the yarmulke on my head, and I'm going to get out of here. And I started walking out towards the front door, and how the setup of the store is. They've got the rubber right by the front, and I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I just stuck my hand out like this, and it just grazed against the rubber very lightly, and I literally just stopped in my tracks, like foot halfway off the ground, and was like, alarms and bells and whistles went off in my head, like, what is that? I need that in my life. And so I bought some for my fiance at the time, and I don't think the good religious girl ever really quite understood what I was going for. And ultimately, I found my way to the kink community by way of, going to a dungeon at Fortress, because I simply just wanted to be around a woman wearing rubber. I wanted to have that experience. I didn't know that I wanted, the BDSM side of it, the pain, the deep feelings that come with that. I just wanted to feel rubber and have that, and it totally opened my eyes. And the story from there, progresses on, level after level after level, but to being here with you today. So it's been a journey. I could probably spend a lot more time going into the different phases of it.
Well, I'm going to ask you some of the deeper things. So, okay. So you remember your first memory is this. Do you know till this day, do you know what that girl was wearing?
Oh, it was like PVC. It was just like, patent leather, like stripes on a shirt. And that was it. I saw the shine. We were like little kids playing like hide and seek. And I just remember, like, in the synagogue while everybody was praying, I was just like, I want to see it. I don't want to be close to it. I want to touch it. And I just remember that. It's not a memory I talk about often, but.
So then you have this memory. Obviously, most people aren't naturally coming across, latex or rubber or anything of that. You're growing up. You're starting to, you get in the years of like seeing some hot rock stars like Gwen Stefani wearing some outfits. You're coming into, your youthful sexuality. Did you feel a pull towards any kinky inclinations, any other like kinks or fetishes or anything like that? Or did you feel like, when you were coming into your sexuality, was there any questions around that? Or was it like, I'm supposed to be this good religious boy, I'm not supposed to, have sex, I'm not supposed to anything? Like, did you notice any of that coming out during those early memories? Those sexual awakening memories, I like to call them.
Yeah, I was very shy. I still am very shy socially. I didn't know how or where to explore any of what I felt. I don't think I knew what I felt. I thought that leather was what I was into, and so anything like leather boots, or I would, like, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I would like steal my mom's leather skirt and then wrap it around my chest so I could masturbate when I was in high school and stuff like that. Just so I could feel that, binding feeling. And I don't think there were like moments along the way there, but I think I don't think I knew that I wanted to get into BDSM to the extent that now I'm like totally into it. I think it was really a slow progression of, I opened the door to rubber, going to the first dungeon I went to was at Fortress, and I had a few sessions and didn't know, I was like, I didn't know if I wanted to be sensual or whatever. I just said, just wear rubber. I don't care. Just wear rubber. I think the joke at Fortress was that I was Latex Steve, like just wear rubber, more rubber. That's all I cared about. But slowly but surely, each session I would get a little bit of pain, a little bit of, mental challenges, and the humiliation, and edging, and this, and every element would come in slowly but surely. And I was like, wow, I do like this. I do like this. And I just keep going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. I would say I'm still going deeper and deeper today, almost 10 years later, and I'm still progressing with my kinks. And it's fun exploring it, because I feel like when you take yourself out of that comfort zone of, this is where I know it's safe, this is what I know I can do and I can handle, but I want to push it just a little bit further and see if I can take it a little bit further. For me, as a submissive, being a submissive is not necessarily about pain or about humiliation. It's about, self-identification. It's about proving myself. And a lot of my sessions, I try to make it sort of like a, not reward-based, but I'm trying to, in the subspace that I'd like to get into, where I'm trying to earn something. I'm trying to earn the respect of the dom that I'm playing with. I'm trying to earn the my own self-respect in terms of what I could take and how much I could feel. And I think that was something that I learned through sessioning. But rubber is still the core for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I love wearing it, and it's so sensory. It feels very welcoming and warm, and I could spend hours talking about what rubber does for me. So I mean,
you're definitely a latex fetishist, which is, I think that's the interesting thing, is that some, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, right, in your own journey, is there are people who are just fetishists, that they don't, if you're into something, you have a fetish, a deep fetish, whether that's latex or leather or heels or, hosiery or whichever.
Right.
It doesn't need to have power dynamics in it. It doesn't mean you're submissive or dominant or whatever. You could purely just be someone who has a fetish for a certain thing that obviously arouses you of some kind, right? And then there's layers to, not just that, but there's other aspects. Some people, and you've got these fetishes, but you also have people who are just kinky, right? And they don't have to have a fetish if they're kinky. You could just be someone who likes different kinky things, whether that's being tied up, whether that's, being spanked, whether that's sensory deprivation. That has nothing to do with your fetish, right? You can just be kinky. And a kinky person doesn't mean you're a top or bottom or whatever. You could just be into kinky things doing both,
Yeah.
And then there's power dynamics, which has to do with, these kind of identities of like, I prefer to be a dominant, and I identify as being a dominant. And so I like to, play in that space of being a dominant or a submissive. And for some people, there's power, there's switches, right? They like the power dynamics, but they like to kind of move around in them. And so then some people have all of them together, where they're like, I'm a fetishist for this, I'm also super kinky, and I'm submissive,
I would say I identify as, I'm totally a submissive. I've tried topping. It's not in me. I can't, well, I shouldn't say that. I can't top a woman. I've played at parties with men in sort of very like light and playful ways where I could top in a and I think sometimes subs make the best tops because we know exactly what we want, and what drives us crazy. So I did have, on a couple occasions, one of the subs that not subs, but friends that I played with as a top for like 10 or 15 minutes with them. I felt very empowered and fun with it. But I am through and through, if playing with a woman or someone who identifies as a woman, that side of it, I'm through and through a sub. And I love the ability, the feeling of giving up control Where in a lot of my life, I can be a very controlling person in terms of my work and my career, and there's something very refreshing and empowering to be someone who strives for control and power, and then hand it just completely on a silver platter to somebody who you worship and respect and value, and to be able to just put that out there and say, here, I'm giving you myself, I'm giving you everything to go. And in a lot of ways, it sounds like falling in love with somebody, but it kind of is like you're just handing it over and saying, I've fallen in love with that feeling and getting into that space. And it was a journey to get there. I don't think that's how I always felt, but I also wasn't always, I think, just comfortable with my own sexuality and my own kinkiness. I started out as just a pure fetishist, and I think I've developed into, as Empress Wu has called me a couple times, a mindless rubber pup slut, pain slut. There's more to it. I forget the rest of it. Something along those lines. But yeah, it's just evolved from layer to layer. And I think for me, and I can't say this would be true for all subs, but for me, the progression has been that I found that way of expressing my kink, my fetishism, my latex, and expanded that into, bondage and getting tied up and feeling that feeling of losing control and being restrained and entrusting yourself to the other person. And then the next step of entrusting them with that pain and that, I think a lot of BDSM has talked about the correlation between pain and an orgasm, and the chemical release in your brain is basically the same chemicals. And when people have asked me about why I'm into BDSM, I use that analogy or that story of saying, if you could master the difference between pain and pleasure, really, at the end of the day, chemically is not a lot. It's just mental. It's telling yourself that there is a fear associated with what you're feeling. Your body is either telling yourself you need to feel pain, panic mode, or it's feeling something intense. And if you could overcome that feeling, if you could find that place where you're not afraid of what you're feeling, your body's like, okay, this must be pleasure. And when I found that ability to get there, I'm not saying there's certain amounts of pain where it's just pain, for sure. You've probably a couple times. But if you can get to that space, it's incredible. I mean, it is the greatest feeling in the world to me. And I think a lot of people are just afraid to explore it. You have to go outside your comfort zone sometimes to say, okay, I'm into rubber. Maybe I'm into being tied up. Maybe I'm into being tied up and being hit. Maybe I'm into being hit and pegged. I don't know where you go from there. But for me, I'm just constantly looking for pushing down that road and saying, okay, what's the next thing that I feel uncomfortable with? How do I try that? This year, lately I've been trying to get in touch with like my feminine side and cross-dressing a little bit and wearing boots. And I have a big fetish for patent boots also. So wearing them myself can be a lot of fun.
You'd make such a good sissy.
I had a very fun session with Chris Comey recently where I dressed up as a puppy, but she got me. We pretended she was buying a puppy, but she wanted a female puppy, and I was male puppy, so she needed to convert me to a female puppy, tagging me, and then,
You'd make a really, but it seems like obviously latex was your, rubber and latex was your gateway, right?
For sure.
And you yourself didn't really know much about, and, let me know if this is correct. I find that there's been a commonality amongst those who are raised in religious, households, whatever religion, if it's very religious, it's almost like you sort of cut off your sexuality where you don't think about like your sexuality, right? You don't think about like, oh, what does pleasure mean to me? What do I like? What am I into? Who am I into? It's almost like it's non-existent because you're not supposed to think about it. It's like it's only there for procreation purposes. So that's the only time you have to. And so in a way, a lot of people don't end up even knowing they're kinky or into all these other things because they've sort of just cut that part off until something is that opening. And for you, it started with, sensation, right? Just like, here's this material that that I can see and I can feel, that feels sensual and sexual of some kind. There's some sort of arousal, some sort of response, right? An arousal response of some kind. And arousal doesn't mean genital arousal. It can just be like, oh, that looks nice, And then from there, it opened up your sexuality of being like, oh, here's stuff that I could possibly be open to and interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up a virgin through college. I mean, didn't have my first kiss, I don't think, till I was a senior in high school. Like, I was so shy and so nervous around that. I'm not going to say that my community was that extreme. I think I was a little bit of an outsider in that sense. But so maybe I was a late bloomer just in general. But, I met what was now my ex-wife, but I met her when I was 21 and she was 16. And after 2 years, everybody was like, well, how come you're not getting married already? Like that. She turned 21. She had her first legal drink, I think, at our wedding. So
Wow.
we were still very young, and there was one night that I remember that was sort of crystallized that world was not for me, and that style of relationship was never going to work for me. And I don't talk about this often, but I'm here with you. So I had the rubber. I had bought her like a top. I think it was like a vest and a schoolgirl skirt kind of thing that day. And maybe she wore it on the honeymoon and that was it. And I really wanted to experience that. For me, I now describe my kink feelings almost like a pressure valve. Like I need to wear rubber or experience something associated with rubber or BDSM once every 2 weeks or so, or I mentally get a little scrambled. And so this had been a 3-year marriage, and I put on the outfit myself and like asked her if we could play, and she went to the shower and goes in the shower, and so when she comes out, we'll play. And I remember sitting on my knees, like right outside the door, like waiting like a sub would with my hands, and I was holding like a collar in my hands like this, waiting for her to come out. And she came out of the bathroom, saw me like that, just said no, and turned around and walked away, and that was it. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to find something else. And that's when I started going to Fortress, and there is a community of people, and eventually met someone who I dated, Dom, and for a long time, and she opened my eyes to so many things in this world that I'm forever grateful, including introducing me to you, actually. So, but later on, there was points in my life where I think I was kind of ready to pull away. When that relationship didn't work, I just assumed that, okay, well, I had my one, connection. I met one person, and that was it. Without that, I have nothing. I'm not going to be in the community anymore. I remember it was a torture garden event, and I don't know if you remember this, actually. You and Dia were there, and I had just been going through the breakup at the time and went by myself to a party and saw you two there. And you both invited me to play with you as friends, which I never forget. And it made me feel so warm and welcome. And I owe both of you, honestly, my connection to the community, because it allowed me to go open back up. I started going to parties again, meeting new people, dating, and being more open about my kink. So in a lot of ways, Lucy, I owe you a whole lot for opening me up and allowing me to feel comfortable in this community. I really do.
Well, I'm glad that like it didn't close you off, that, I think you're an example of this, is that no matter where you come from, you know, if you want this a part of your life, you can make it a part of your life. It does take some time, it takes some effort, it's getting out of your comfort zone. You know, you've mentioned yourself that being shy, you know, it might be hard to go to a party on your own. It might be a little nerve-wracking, but but this community is quite open and welcoming, if you make the effort, you know.
I totally agree with that. I think I've had personal issues with like the male dom side of the community and like how some of the male dom oriented parties aren't as welcoming, but I found that the femdom side of our community is so warm. And the deeper I've gone into it and the more friends I've made in it, the more amazing I find it to be. It's really supportive. I mean, I come from a very religious but very tight-knit community, and I find a lot of those similarities in our community in a lot of ways, where everybody's very self-supportive, very accepting, not very judgmental of each other, and looking for ways to keep each other together and supporting our endeavors, our dungeons or our careers or whatever it may be. I find that to be something truly beautiful. And I love our community. I love everybody who's embraced me in it. So it's kind of really cool to be a part of it. I agree with you. I think it takes a little bit of courage. It takes a little bit of putting yourself out there, but that to me is very much the way I feel about the whole experience of BDSM and going out there. You have to look for a little bit of extending yourself. Even if it's just one toe at a time, you could find that way to get a little further out. I've gotten a little more daring. I mean, I'm not someone who wears rubber in public in flashy ways, but I bought like rubber Converse and I won a big award in my industry, and I went up to win the award and I was wearing bright red rubber Converse. And everybody was asking me questions about it, like, where did you get those shoes? And I loved it because I was like, hey, I'm here with my kink flag out and nobody knows. And it's a little way of expressing it. You find ways to sort of expand your comfort zones, and you experiment. But that's like everything, sexually, kink-wise, career, life, everything. You have to be able to look for ways to grow yourself as a person. And for me, it starts with rubber, which I would love to spend like 5 minutes talking about why it means so much to me, but it's gone down a much deeper rabbit hole, and I'm very happy for that. Like, some people go down a rabbit hole and they're not happy. I could not be more thrilled with where life has taken me. It really is.
That's
very,
awesome.
very lucky. Very lucky.
So let's speak about this. For someone, describe what it is, like what emotions, what feelings, describe it as thoroughly as you can as someone who has a rubber and latex kind of fetish, because I think some people don't, people who aren't fetishists in general, and there are many, I would say, not everyone and not a lot of people have a fetish for something, so they don't necessarily understand what that like drive is, what that appeal is. So for you, how does that feel? What does it feel like?
Yeah, so rubber feels safe. That's what it feels like to me. It's the ultimate form of safety. The feeling of whatever you're wearing, and wherever you're wearing it, feeling hugged, feeling like there's this just sort of wrapped up layer of safety to it. I think it started more just with the look, right? Rubber is stunning to look at. I'm becoming a little bit more of a photographer now. I'm sitting here in my mini studio right now. So I don't know, I've been posting a lot of my pictures, and I'm actually hopefully doing a shoot with your partner later this week. So I'm really excited for that, because her art is something that I'm just always blown away by. But the visual aspect, it's so stunning. I mean, you can see just in the light right now how my glove is shining. It's just, I'm entranced by it as it is. But the feeling of it, aside from the fashion element of it, I love just the power that it conveys. It shapes your body in ways like you don't have to have a perfect figure for rubber to look perfect on you. I think a lot of people look at it and say, okay, it's a second skin. If I don't like my curves or my this or my that, then it's not going to look good in this. It's actually the total opposite. Rubber has a way of shaping and forming and compressing things into shapes that you want them to be. And so you look better in it in a lot of ways. There's the sensory aspect of it that I truly love, which is when you feel something here, right, in this one spot, I feel ripples of it in the surrounding area. It's not like I'm just being touched in that spot. So if somebody spanks me, I feel it in the surrounding area, not just where I felt the impact. It also allows me to take a significantly harder beating, so as a barrier. So I always tell doms when they're playing with me, if it's through rubber, go for it. I don't care. Go as hard as you want. I think I love the smell. I love the taste of it, and I think it's like a lot of fetishes. Like you develop these positive associations with it. Personally, if you get a little off the ground mentally, and you're wearing rubber, it's just the ultimate feeling in the world to me. It's as good as sex. I can't describe how warm it makes me feel inside. There is such it's like when you get something right, if you play a sport or something like that, if you're playing, let's say, tennis, and you have that perfect hit, you feel it in your whole body. Everything just feels right. If you're a dom and you get that perfect whip crack, it's not just the sound, but like you feel in your body, like that felt good. I got that right. And I think rubber is like a constant feeling of that for me. It just feels like, hey, this feels right. It feels good. It feels warm. It feels, hugging. And I don't want to sound like so stereotypical in the sense that I am a child of trauma. I had some child abuse, not anything sexually like that, but physical abuse a little bit. So the feeling, like for me, sensory is very important. And I think safety element of rubber and the warmth and the feeling of being hugged. I'm a very affectionate person. I'm very tactile. And so those elements of rubber they drive me crazy. But visually, smell-wise, I mean everything. Every sense that you could possibly apply to it. I could lick it, and taste it all day.
That's truly what being a fetishist is like. Just just smother yourself in it.
I have like latex sheets that I use a lot of the time, and every now and then I'll wear like rubber underwear to work, so nobody knows and stuff like that. But
what's your favorite piece? Do you have a favorite piece? First off, something that is just like you really love wearing. It's just your favorite piece. And then if it's different, what's your most like kind of hilariously unique piece?
Interesting question. So I definitely think about what my favorite piece is, and I think it changes on any given day. My most prized piece, how about that?
Yeah.
I many years ago went up to Montreal and met the owners of Polymorph and have stayed very good friends with them. And they are the nicest, sweetest people in the world. So if they're watching, hello, I sent them the invite. So they made for me a pair of bondage pants, plaid bondage pants that have like some of the plaid is green stripe and it lights up in a black light. And I've worn that to raves, regular like vanilla raves and stuff like that. That, because it's one of a kind, is probably my most prized piece. I have a lot. So I tried to take an inventory of how much I have. I lost track at about 150 pieces. And I've continued to buy since then. That was about a year ago. I'm currently in the process of cataloging it all, so I'm redoing that. I think I'm also very proud of a rubber biker jacket that I have from Zorenko, which took a couple tries to get right. And let's see, what else is unique that I have?
What's kind of funny, unique?
Yeah, I think I like I love my assless chaps. Those are, I think those are because they make my ass look great. I've been told that is my best feature as a sub is I have a very spankable, reactive ass. I've been told many times that I have a very fun ass to spank, and so that just perfectly shapes them. I also like this straight jacket that I have, rubber straight jacket from Polymorph, and then I have like this rubber sling. It's like it has a pop off crotch, and it's just like a wrestler's onesie kind of thing, but like open and then open ass, and then you pop off the front. And that is one of my favorite because it's when
it's pretty versatile. It's pretty hilarious.
I got it from Polymorph, and it was got for me by my ex, and when the Dom ex that I dated. She got that for me, and I'm like, I'm never wearing this. There's no way. And then as soon as I put it on, I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. I like this, and I actually wear it a lot in session. And a lot of people have a lot of fun with it because it looks goofy in the beginning, but it's really hot, actually.
That's cool.
I think I wore it I was in a movie with Ashley Page. It was a vanilla movie, but I'm wearing it in that. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's probably some of my favorite pieces. Actual clothing.
All right, so I kind of want to open it up to questions, but I also have some questions of my own. So for those of you in the audience, feel free to type in your questions. As long as it's respectful, I will pop it up to be asked. I do, from someone who has, you've now spent some time in the community. You've also have, played and seen pro doms, and which, is a bit different than just lifestyle. What is some advice you would give to subs who, you can give multiple avenues advice, but reaching out to a pro dom, being part of the community, right? Some people, what is your advice for some of these subs? Because I feel like, you've heard some complaints amongst the, people you've been around. What are some things you would say to, subs who are potentially hoping to come into this world in any form, whether it's professionally, community, lifestyle, whichever?
Yeah. So I think of myself as the luckiest sub in the world because I played with some of the greatest doms. But, I always say I'm lucky for that. But then at the same time, the affirmation that I get back from some of the doms is, well, you're respectful. You treat the dom in the process with respect. And to me, that just comes, I don't think that should have to be explained to people.
But it does.
I've dated doms, so I see the messages that they get sometimes from subs, trying to, try and apply for a session. It's not that hard. Explain who you are, what you're looking to do, what you would like to get out of it, and when you want to do it. It's not that complicated. It's like if I wanted to go and, make a restaurant reservation, I would tell them what day I want to go, what time I want to eat, and how many people I am, and what, if I have any dietary restrictions. It's kind of the same thing as far as I'm concerned. You have to, at the end of the day, treat people with respect. It's really that simple. I think if you treat, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but if you treat a sex worker like a sex worker, and I use that for negative connotation, which I don't think there should be, but then you don't deserve to play with that person. I'm sorry. You need to treat the people that you want to spend time with the same respect that you would expect for yourself. And maybe that's kind of what you want, is you don't want respect. Maybe you want to be humiliated. Maybe you want to be rejected, and that's what you're going for. That could very well be the case. But if you're really hoping to have a session with somebody, And you want to get that ultimate experience of being connected to somebody. And I had a session once with Lady Eden that we talked about afterwards, where we made eye contact through some very like crazy moments in the session, and it was just like the ultimate spiritual feeling of that. Mm-hmm. When you feel that, if you want to feel that, then you need to put the time in. You need to be respectful. You need to, if they have an application form, go to the website, read it, take 3 seconds. You want to spend a few hours with a beautiful dom and a woman who you worship. If you really do worship them, then put the time in. Do a little, forgive me, goddamn research. Know what they like doing. Know who they are. Know what they. Maybe you're not a fit for them. I mean, there's certain doms that I totally respect, but they're not necessarily the doms that I want to play with because I've read their profiles. I'm like, yeah, that's not necessarily what I want to do. And again, it's just use your common sense. And yes, I've seen you post stuff. I've seen doms, and I've seen the emails come in personally, and I just get so upset on your behalf, because I think it gives real subs who have a respect for the experience and respect for the providers such a bad name. And I need this in my life. I need to feel this in my life, and this is the outlet that I have right now. I once had a discussion with somebody about, whether they wanted to date somebody who saw or had seen providers, right? And it was a very contentious conversation for me because, I said to them, listen, I, thank God, have had some success in my career that I could go and do these things. And these people that I have seen over the years enabled me to achieve and find the sanity that I need so that I can go and continue to succeed. If I want to be my best self, I need to express this side of myself in this environment. And if you can't respect that, then you can't respect me and who I am. So it's very much the same. I think you need to be able to find that place where you're approaching everything that you're doing with this utmost respect. The respect that you would have in the session itself is the same respect you should have going into it and planning it, and afterwards in terms of the aftercare and gifts and rewards and payment. Like, don't question payment, please. Like, if you can't afford it, don't do it. I'm sorry. The first couple sessions I went to at Fortress, I would save up for 2-3 months for a 1-hour session, and it was like my entire life savings at the time. But it was worth it. It saved my life. It really did in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Is that a good question? I'm sorry. I did warn you. I tend to ramble sometimes.
It's okay. No, you gave some good information out there. So some questions. So do you have any books, art, writings, articles, movies that really resonated with you? And obviously this has to do with anything, within kink and BDSM that you want people out there that they should check out.
Yeah. Nothing that I would say is like really kink oriented necessarily. I think I find power in specific characters in movies. Some of the classics like Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer will forever be the ultimate for me.
Oh yeah.
Never been a sexier character ever, and there never will be again. Every Catwoman has been a disgrace. It's a disgrace relative to that one. That to me is something. I love a powerful woman character. I watched the show Bonding recently. I'm up and down on it. First season was definitely not realistic. The second one's getting there. But I think you find. Actually, I take that back. There is one thing that I definitely relate to. I spent a lot of time in therapy talking about this one particular episode in Billions, when Paul Giamatti's character is sort of being outed for his kink. Yeah. And I struggled with this because I find that society today, he basically makes it like it's a big reveal. I'm into BDSM, and oh my God, he's such a horrible person for coming out and saying this. And I'm not trying to belittle this in any way, but for me, this was a little bit traumatic watching that episode because I don't want to do that. I don't want to out myself in that way, but framed kink in today's society for me in a way that, if you look at the way that maybe being gay or trans is becoming increasingly accepted, and yet BDSM still has this stigma around it.
Yeah.
In ways that there's something wrong with you, or and I think people are starting to understand there's nothing wrong with somebody who's gay. There's nothing wrong with somebody who wants or is trans. Kink still is viewed as like some deficiency in a person. And that episode for that resonated with me because I struggled with accepting that. But I think in general, just strong female characters in movies. I'm a big movie buff, so I can watch all day. I can rattle off movies and characters. I don't want to waste the whole.
All right, we do have something. This is logistics about latex. Someone asked, "Aren't you totally drenched in sweat?" So
No, I'm not. No, I am not. You have to learn how to wear rubber. First off, I play a lot of hockey, and I'm a hockey goalie in my free time. If you want to talk about drenched in sweat, that's sweat. This is nothing compared to that. It depends on what you wear and how you wear it. If you're concerned about sweating, I tell people don't wear stockings or socks made out of rubber because it tends to cool down there. But something like this, it's just running down and I don't feel it. So it's just there. It's not going to bother you. You feel a little bit of like a trickle every now and then going through the clothes, but if it's good quality, how you dress in it makes a big difference. Don't go too. I mean, people say you can't wear too much lube when you're wearing rubber, but don't go too crazy. Getting the right dressing aid is important, whether it's wearing a lube or a powder. There's a powder that Polymorph has that comes with a little pooper on it, like you pat it down with this little pad. I use that sometimes for fashion stuff, but personally, I like the B-Gloss dressing aid. It just works well with my skin. I think everybody has different skin in different ways, and you have to find what works for you. But I don't, barring session sweat, which is a whole nother, that's different. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, honestly. I don't feel like I'm drenched in sweat, no.
Because you're also a fetishist. So we have a question. How did you get into photography, and has kink been a big inspiration for that avenue?
I always liked photography. I liked it to, nature photography. I've always, all the art in my house is my own photography. So it's mostly like pictures of like the Arc de Triomphe, the Eiffel Tower, birds that I took pictures of in Honduras and stuff like that. And it's only recently that I've started to explore with my it's a COVID thing for me, really. I wanted to find a new way to connect with the community. And I like to think I'm a decent photographer in terms of the composition. I'm still learning the editing side of it, and I'm taking classes in Photoshop and stuff like that now. And I know nobody wants to hire a photographer right now. Not that I'm charging at the moment, but wants to hear that the person's still learning. But I think I've always had a very good eye for composition. That's something I'm always very proud of. And my photos, whether they were sport photography or nature or my personal favorite subject, my puppy, she's the cutest Shiba Inu in the world. I've always liked photography. I like capturing a moment. I don't like staged photographs. I like photography that conveys an emotion, no matter what it is, whether it could be two birds on a beach. I actually have a picture of two birds on a couple of rocks in my bathroom that I look at when I'm in the bathroom, because it conveys this feeling of like incredible calm, and then there's this wave about to crash down on them in the background. So it's like they're incredibly calm, they don't know what's going to happen, but yet there's so much happening around them, and that picture just kind of represents so much to me. And like that's kind of what I look for, is a picture that tells a story. And right now, the story I want to tell, that I enjoy telling very much, is my connection with kink. And I think I'm opening that side of myself up to getting more adventurous with it, as I have with other parts of my life with kink.
That's cool. All right. So someone asks, has following your bliss with rubber affected your thoughts about your religion? Like,
No. I would say my thoughts about religion affected my thoughts about religion. I am still, when people ask me, I say I am orthodox in belief, just not in practice. I still believe a lot of the things that I grew up with. There are just logistical hurdles that make me uncomfortable. I would say my rubber and my kinks in general have made acceptance in my community difficult because I have certain marriage barriers. For people that are Jewish, they know what a Kohen is. So a Kohen can't marry a convert or this or that. And there's all kinds of special rules for them. And so things like that are more of a problem for me than being a kink. I think being a kink, it's like any other relationship issue. I don't think it affects my thoughts about religion. I think it affects my thoughts about engaging in the community of my religion, because I am increasingly pessimistic about finding someone that my community will accept, that will accept me. And that's a totally different issue. And I'm at a point where I care way much more about being accepted as a person than I do by my community's standards.
Yeah.
That's, I look for that every day.
Yeah, I think that's, when it comes to reconciling sometimes our religious upbringings and like expectations and thoughts and stuff. And in your case, like marriage expectations, right?
Yep.
I think many of us, no matter whether you're in a religious background or a very specific culture, me, like, I had a pretty traditional Vietnamese background, and it's kind of like, there's these expectations, right? Like, there's these expectations, and I think we all have to go through that internal journey of like, here are these things that have been taught to us by our culture, by society, by our family, by, how we grew up, whichever. We all need to take lots of moments to ask ourselves, what is our connection with those things? And do they still hold true? Because what your culture values may not be what you value, right? And that's okay. And we all kind of have to reconcile a lot of that with ourselves.
The funny thing is I do still have many of the cultural and ethical and moral beliefs and support, and I'm very close to my family. I see them all the time, and I have tried to sort of put the feelers out there to sort of open up this side of my life to them, but I try and keep it limited. I think it's very different when you talk about the religion itself versus how I define myself within that religion and what my interactions will be going forward in my life. I think religion is something you have to take day to day, because I've had some incredibly religiously powerful experiences that make me feel connected to it, and then I've had some experiences where I'm just like, at least my community, I don't want to be anywhere near it right now, and you take a step back, which is really like not cool. So it's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can still be quite religious and kinky, like they don't have to go against each other, because I think there's a lot of values in some of the messages, right? Like for someone who, I actually grew up Catholic. My father's Catholic, my mother's Buddhist, but more more of the religious Buddhism, not the spiritual Buddhism that more I practice now, where I see it as spirituality compared to a religion. Like, there are a lot of really beautiful values, right? family, closeness, helping others, helping people in need, and being religious and being kinky still can go very hand in hand, but there are aspects that don't intersect very well. Whether that's like the practicality of how marriage is supposed to look, right?
Right.
And so there are parts where you have to ask yourself, like, are these things I value, or are these things I'm told I should value? And what does that look like for me? And what things do I want to keep? And what things do I maybe not want to keep, in that? So
I had this one teacher, this one rabbi who was a leader of our community. He passed away many years ago, maybe 5, 10 years ago about. And when he taught us in high school, he was very adamant about one thing, that the fundamental, no matter how you look at it, the fundamental thing about Judaism comes down to one thing called tikkun olam, which is fixing the world. And that comes down to you treat people with respect, right? You want the world to be a better place no matter what you do every day, everything that you do. What somebody does in their privacy is not going to make the world a better or worse place. If anything, it will make it a better place, actually, because people will be happier and more fulfilled. And so, from that perspective, more power to everybody that wants to enjoy their kinks. I don't see how that is in conflict, if anything. And I think you, again, have seen the clientele in New York in particular is there's quite the element of the Orthodox Jewish community that tends to come out. It can be repression, but I think it's also like there's an element of the religion itself that I think also being religious itself that allows people to connect with the element of a community very closely. So there's a correlation there. I think there's an element of community of religion that allows people to connect with the spiritual and the deeper elements of kink. And so it could be repression, but it could also, I think, in some ways, for some people, and myself included, I think, be the opposite. It's actually it's a tutorial. It's a segue into kink in the sense that it allows you to connect with things and opens you up to connecting with yourself and the people around you in that way. So
I agree.
I don't think the two will have to be at odds with each other.
Yeah, I think they're a little more similar, like I love really like Catholic religious role plays because there's a lot, like all the wording, right? The submission, the divinity, there's so many words that pull from all of that, serving someone else, sacrificing, right? Transformation, just even subspace, right? Is like there's there's an aspect of like divine calling in that. Like there's so much of this that really intertwines with religious thoughts and beliefs that lend very well to each other.
Yeah, Yom Kippur, you're supposed to not eat. The reason why you're not supposed to eat is you're supposed to achieve this higher state of worship for God. I mean, that sounds somewhat familiar. I mean,
yeah. Very chastity it is for everyone. I do want to move over to this question, which I'm going to actually, for you audience member, I know we have a few questions, but I think this is a good one to end on. So it kind of blends into a few. So it says, thank you so much for opening up for us. Do you have any advice for subs who may be struggling accepting their kinks, fetishes in the shadows of society or in their relationships with significant others? Is the last word.
Well, as far as the community,
so just, do you have any advice for those who are struggling with kind of maybe accepting their kinks and, maybe because they're not part of a community or maybe because they're still kind of hiding this and they haven't maybe took the step to even see someone professionally or walk into a store like Purple Passion, right? They're obviously maybe viewing this at home secretly, but haven't done anything, haven't made any like actual clear choices or movement.
without a doubt, the most important thing in coming to grips or acceptance and opening up with your kinks and your fetishes is communication. Whether that's with yourself and being open about the things that you feel and are interested in. You may not know what they are, maybe you do. If it's with a significant other that you're concerned with, then you need to be able to have that conversation and talk through it and explore that in a safe space. I think if it's a healthy relationship, you should be able to do that. Whether that's with a professional as a service provider or a professional as a therapist. For me, some of it was therapy, some of it was, in the service of a Dom, and a lot of it was in a personal relationship with somebody who used to be a Dom and was able to connect with me on those levels. Having that comfortable space, that's, lack of a better term, a safe space, and somebody that you could open up to and find somebody who will welcome your kinks is everything. I said earlier about how when I was kind of afraid of whether or not I was going to be back in the community, Lucy, you and Dia were there for me in the sense that you just invited me to spend a couple minutes and play with you at a party, maybe just because you knew what I was going through at the time and knew about my breakup or whatever, but it allowed me to say that my kinks are not exclusive to this sphere of my life, and there's a broader circle, and there are other people who understand, and there are other people who are experiencing it and are willing to participate. And I think for me, safe spaces became parties. It became stuff like Curio. For a while I was going to Torture Garden or NSFW or pendulum parties, whatever it may have been, with people that I trusted, who I felt safe with, and was able to communicate before the parties, hey, this is what I want to get out of tonight. This is what I'd like to do. This is, if we're going to go to the party, I'd like you to collar me and lead me around as your sub. And, it's okay if you want to degrade me. And if you're going to, if the other person was playing the role of the dominant for me, I'd say, it's okay if you want to go and beat somebody up. In fact, I encourage that as being your sub. I would, be honored if you want me to cook their wrists in, if you ask me to, or hold the paddle while you're picking out another piece. Or, again, those are things that I was able to communicate to my partner to say that this is okay for me. Is it okay for you? And do you understand it? I think that's not unique to kink. I think that's just a relationship. Kink is BDSM is the ultimate. In a relationship, it's the ultimate test, right? I mean, there's so much communication that has to be done. There's so much, there's so many dangerous boundaries that you have to clear up. You have to set, you have to discuss, you have to be clear about who trusts who and what. It's a challenge, but you have to take a step back and think about it. And for me in life, that's an important thing that I'm trying to get better at, is taking a step back, evaluating the situation, and where am I now? What are my goals? What do I want to get to? And then how do I see that happening? And then what do I need to do to talk that out? So you have that conversation with your partner, and I know I'm running long, Lucy, I apologize, but I think that's the most important thing is communication and trust, and communicating with somebody you trust.
Yeah. I think, it always comes down to communication. And I know so many of you out there are looking for sometimes an easy answer, right? The easy answer of well, how do I just communicate? And that's the thing is you kind of just have to make that choice to do it or you don't, and there is no easier or faster answer because there isn't. Communication is hard. You're going to fuck up. You're going to say the wrong things, and you have to keep trying and trying and trying. And coming to terms with your kinks and your fetishes and your sexuality, it is a journey. It is not a single instantaneous moment that happens and then bam, I'm like good with myself, you know?
Yeah.
Like it is an ongoing journey. And even with what you were saying, Pups, was like you were saying like you kind of went through all these like different iterations and tried this and tried that and you're still, you know, figuring out certain things for yourself and what that looks like. And it's an evolution and it will always be an evolution, but you have to be willing to take that first step, you know. And even for those people who are, you know, secretly watching this at home and, you know, you haven't or too fearful to reach out to a dom or a provider or anything else, the fact that you're watching this is one of your steps.
Right.
You know, and I think that, and then you watch more things around this, you look up more stuff, and then maybe you get more comfortable and get the courage to reach out to a pro dom or something like that. There's so many avenues this could go down.
Right. Write your thoughts down. That's a thing that I got in the habit of like, if I had a thought about something that I wanted to express to somebody around Kink, was pull up my iPhone, notepad, type it in really quickly before I forgot it, and then come back and look at it later so that when I sat with that person, I could express how I felt in that moment. And I think that's also very important, is being able to capture the moment when you get it, because I have ADHD and it'll just disappear on me. I'll never remember what I was thinking that day. But yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely believe in writing down. That's something that I give out to a lot of subs as an assignment, is have a BDSM journal, have a kinky journal, a fantasy journal, write your fantasies, write your kinks down, write stuff you've seen that you might be interested in. It's for you. It doesn't have to come true, but write it down and kind of see in it. It can really help alleviate some of your own kind of thoughts where it just swirls around. I call our minds a black hole when things are just swirling around. Like there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. So put it down for yourself and come back to it. And over time, you're kind of having that internal conversation with yourself to feel more comfortable to have conversations with other people.
The one thing I'll add, it's the last thing I'll say because it's way over time. If you're a sub and you're looking to explore and you haven't done anything yet and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I engage with the dom? What's the safest way? I think that, ironically, COVID has presented us with a lot of new ways of engaging, whether that's, you know, Sex Panther or OnlyFans or something like that, and dip your toe in one step at a time. I met a new dom that I played with recently. I mentioned Mistress Tommy. I met her once at a party, but like didn't really say anything to her. And then now I Sex Panther texted her once or twice, and then we ended up doing a session afterwards because we felt like immediately there was a chemistry there in the texting. So look for ways to look for chemistry, but look on the website, look on their profiles, read their Twitter feeds, and then look for a small way to engage. And if that feels right, go a step further, a step further, a step further. And eventually, I'm sure you'll find yourself in a safe environment in a session or further, and you'll be really happy that you did that.
Definitely. Good advice. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we've never seen it, if you would like to support us, and our weekly live show, please look below, is our Patreon. It's for all types of people, and there's some really cool memberships, rewards for those who join. So please do so. And, you know, I want to say thank you to our guests, Photopups, for being on and looking really fabulous in your latex gear. And being open and vulnerable, because this is a side that a lot of people wonder about. You know, there is a lot of, you know, doms out there who, who are easily more accessible, and seeing the other side is really important. And again, like, I get this a lot, so this is why I'm going to say this. not everyone feels comfortable being public, which means for those of you who are wondering, oh, well, Photopups doesn't look like me, right? There are all types of subs of all gender, of all sexualities, of all race, of all body sizes. Not everyone feels comfortable putting themselves out there. So even though you may not see yourself represented in photos or in stuff like that, keep in mind that it doesn't mean someone like you is not part of this. I see all types of people, and I understand that like it's not always represented in my photos because I use what's convenient, and Pain Puppy is my convenient, is my slave. So I use the one person I know who can be in my photos, who I trust. So yes, it's not as representative of all the types of people I see, but not everyone is comfortable. So for those of you out there, you're not alone. There are many people.
A shameless plug, if anybody has any other questions they want to ask me, or I see there's some here. You could follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Photopop NYC. I am trying to get my photography career off the ground.
Awesome.
As a side hustle or for fun. And so if anybody wants to shoot with me, reach out. Or Lucy or anybody else wants a sub for a photo shoot, I very much enjoy doing that for a couple that I've done already. So I would love doing that as well. And just reach out. I want to be as helpful as possible because I love our community and I want everybody to feel as welcome as possible.
Awesome. Thank you again, Photopups, for being on our show. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And, catch us next week, every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a good night, all.
Good night. Thank you, Ms. Lucy.
You are welcome.